David L. Katz, K-A-T-Z.
And Doctor?
Dr. David L. Katz.
Your area of specialty?
I'm an internist and a preventive medicine specialist. I mostly study chronic disease prevention, but worked as an emergency physician back in the day, so I know the basics.
How would you find Mr. Birdsall?
So 2 police officers showed up in my backyard this morning, which is a bit unusual. We live in a pretty quiet spot. They told me what was going on. I hike these woods all the time, and I know there are a lot of woods here, so this is pretty much the proverbial needle in a haystack. We had helicopters flying essentially over our house. So I thought, I had as good a chance of finding him as anybody. I've actually cut a trail through these woods that connects up to a network of trails in there, and it kind of meanders. I thought that's a good way to cover a grid. And I took my dogs, my golden doodle in particular has an excellent nose, and I didn't really have much hope of finding him, but I thought, all I can do is try. And about 1.5 miles or so into the woods, almost hiked right by him. He was just slightly off this trail. I think he had been using this trail that I had cut, but he was sitting on a stone, and spotted him. I think he was somewhat relieved to find out that he wasn't going to be alone in the woods for too much longer. And did a very cursory medical assessment. I mean, clearly he was cogent and conversational. Checked his heart rate, asked him a little bit about his medical history, see if he was okay to walk. And actually, his particular problem walking out is somehow during the night and his adventure, he lost his belt, so his pants kept falling down. so that plus his state of slight dehydration made it very difficult to walk around. So we covered about 1 mile, at which point he was really starting to labor. And so I took him out to a very clear spot, had him look me in the eye and pledge that he wouldn't wander off, although at that point he wasn't going to go anywhere very fast. And I actually ran back to my house to get him some water and call the police, because at that point I really felt like I could use some help getting him the rest of the way out. Then ran back to give him the water and basically spent the rest of my morning running back and forth to find the police, and then it was a group effort to get Kingslee the rest of the way.
You went out there at what time, and I know you were 1.5 miles into the walk. How long into the walk?
So the police came by my house, I guess it must have been between 9:30 and 10. I wasn't able to go right into the woods. I had a couple things I had to do first. But as soon as those were done, I would say maybe 10:45, I set off into the woods. So I'm not sure what time it is now, 12:30. I think this whole thing took just shy of 2 hours. I would say to get to the point where I found him, it took me less than half an hour. Then covering the distance back that we covered together, kind of holding him up, about an hour. And then the rest of the time was a group effort.
So you're saying this was a trail that you actually cut yourself?
Yeah, actually, I marked a trail that hooks up to this network of trails, and it's very subtly blazed with these big old-fashioned nails that I put in trees to rust, so we call it the Rusty Nail Trail, so it's private. But I'm certainly perfectly happy to have Kingslee hiking there, provided he hikes back out.
And Doctor, I mean, it seems real lucky that it was you who found him, kind of some basic things to check for. Do you think that was pretty lucky that you found him?
As it turns out, I think Kingslee's a pretty robust guy. We spent the whole night in the woods. Fortunately, I guess this is the upside of climate change, right? It was a very mild night, because had it been a very cold night, which this time of year could have been, I think this outcome could have been quite a bit different. As it turns out, he really didn't need much of anything medical, and I suspect anybody would have known that after a night in the woods he needed water. So, I think really the only thing that I did that had much to do with medical expertise was, as we were trying to get back, I was periodically checking his heart rate, and it did shoot up with exertion, and when it reached a certain point I made sure we stopped and let him rest. And then it was starting, basically his heart rate was starting to climb with less and less exertion. So awareness of that resulted in me deciding I really should not lead him any further out of the woods. I tried to carry him out, but he was just he's stiff and had a difficult time bending over my shoulders, so that wasn't working terribly well. So at that point, I called in the cavalry, and they showed up very promptly, and they did the rest.
How was he when you first encountered him? Did he say anything? You said he seemed a little relieved. Did he?
Yeah. So he was calm. I get the sense, and although we're neighbors, I didn't really know him before. I get the sense he loves the woods. He's accustomed to being in the woods. I think he had a certain comfort level. I mean, you kind of got a Thoreau feeling from him. So there was a calmness that you might not expect of somebody who had been the product of a search all night and helicopters flying overhead. But I think he was relieved, because I think he knew at that point he wasn't going to find his own way out. And I don't know whether he'd begun to worry about hunger and thirst, but he indicated to me that he was thirsty.